Welcome to episode 2 of History Snippets Season 3. I'm Sarah, the curator of Edwards Place in Springfield, Illinois, and today I'm introducing you to Maggie Irwin, a neighbor and sometimes employee of the Edwards family. Margaret Irwin was born in 1850 in Pennsylvania. By the mid-1850s, she was already living in Springfield. She had 3 siblings, but as far as I know, only 2 of them lived with her when she was in Springfield, William and Hetty. She also had a maternal aunt named Hetty, so there were 2 Hettys in the same household, seeming like they had the same problem that the Edwardses had in naming everybody the same name. I'm looking at you, Benjamin Edwards. Funnily enough, while the Irwins lived in Springfield, they leased a house that was owned by the Edwards family. This house belonged to Helen Maria Edwards and was a gift from Benjamin Edwards, her father, upon her marriage to Moses Condell. If you've seen some of my previous episodes, you've seen that they moved to Kansas shortly after their marriage, and that is actually where we get a lot of our information about the servants and neighbors in the letters from Helen the mother to Helen the daughter. By the way, this house still stands today. It is across the street from Edwards Place and is privately owned. A fun fact, when Helen Condell lived in the home, she used a handkerchief to let her mother know when it was appropriate and when it was not appropriate to visit her. And if you've ever had your in-laws show up unexpected at your house, I think you understand. When Maggie lived there, she did have some acquaintance with the Edwards family. Helen, like many of her relationships, alternated between feeling gossipy about her neighbors and feeling charitable toward them. Helen began her opinions of the Irwin family by saying, "You know I am not very neighborly, so I do not much care who takes the house for the present." She considered Maggie's Aunt Hetty to have peculiar ideas, and I so wish I know what those peculiar ideas were because Aunt Hetty sounds like a very cool aunt. But unfortunately, Helen did not elaborate about those ideas. She said that William thought more highly of himself than he should, and that little Maggie, she was 17 at the time of the letter written, was ceremonious, basically saying that she was far too formal and over the top in her politeness to the Edwards family. Yes, Maggie was too nice. In the late 1860s, Maggie worked off and on for the Edwards family. Helen wrote of Maggie, "She is a nice child and could be made a splendid cook if anyone would train her, for she has a decided taste for it." It's not surprising to me that Helen would promote this type of position for Maggie, being what Helen would have considered to be within Maggie's circumstances. Apart from the occasional cooking she did for the Edwardses, she also helped out with Tom, their grandchild, while his parents were in Kansas. But it wasn't too much longer that Maggie was married. Between 1870 and 1873, she married Cleveland James Salter. They had 2 children, Cleveland and Alice. Maggie later moved back to Pennsylvania for a short time, then back to Illinois, and finally ended up in St. Louis, where she passed away in 1904. And she was buried in Oak Ridge Cemetery in Springfield as well. She also had a connection to the well-to-do Bunn family in Springfield. Maggie's daughter Alice stayed with the Bunn family when she was accompanying her mother's remains back to Springfield. And she was probably named after the person she stayed with, Alice Bunn. Unfortunately, my time is limited on how much research I can do on each person that was a neighbor or an employee of the Edwards family, so I have to extricate myself from each fascinating story to move on to the next one. And that's how I can bring you a new video every month for History Snippets. Thanks.